right.
You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
We're live
All
on my end.
righty. We are live. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Limitless Mindset Roundtable discussion here. Today is episode 11. Today's going to be the law of choice and accountability. This is a good one. Me and Tim were talking about right before this call that like this is the core beliefs. Like this is one of the ones that is really at the heart of what we truly believe, and we're going to get down to this one for sure. But before we do that, if you're new here, my name is Logan Manzanares. I'm a business owner, a fitness professional, transformed well over 2,000 people's lives through this little thing we call health and fitness. Real estate investor, a husband, a father, and one of the most grateful people on this planet. And so today we're going to talk about the law of choice and accountability. And with me today, I have a really awesome guest, or not really guest, co-host with me, and that's Mr. Tim Cruz. And so Tim Cruz is a stud, but that doesn't do him justice. I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself and tell all the peoples out there who he is.
What's going on, guys? Coach Tim here with BSB Wealthy Body Coaching. Self-proclaimed meathead. I love picking heavy things up, setting it down over and over and over again. But even more than that, I really love helping people reach their fullest potential, becoming the strongest, best version of themselves. And I'll just add this today. I'm going to give Logan a run for his money. I'm coming up on your heels with being the most grateful person on this planet.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about the law of choice and accountability. Let's see what it is. So, law of choice and accountability states that we are solely responsible for the results in our lives. Regardless of outside influences or circumstances, we can always choose what we think and what we do. We are accountable for the results that we create because of it. While we cannot control what happens to us, we can choose how we perceive it and how we respond. The more accountability we take for our reality, the greater power we have to change it. And so that is just a really good definition. With that being said, Tim, if you want to break it down into even a simpler, more layman's terms, or even just like what you're like, how would you describe it?
I mean, it's really tough to add to that definition because I think it's a very succinct definition. But I would say that instead of thinking about accountability, it's freedom, right? Responsibility equals freedom. Have you ever read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink?
No.
So first off, it literally is, the entire book is about this. And I won't go into details about the book, but essentially, the more accountability we have, the more responsibility we have, ultimately, the more freedom we have. So I think it's important to put those two together, because when we think of responsibility, most of us go back to like childhood and like getting in trouble of like, you're responsible, you're in trouble, this, that, and the other, when really responsibility gives you freedom to choose and to ultimately capture your own ship and manifest your own destiny. So that's kind of how I take it.
Well, give me an example when you say freedom. What does that mean?
We kind of talked about this on the last episode, but if you have no responsibility, if you have no accountability, no responsibility, ultimately you're kind of a slave to living this unconscious life, right? Like if you don't like your job, you don't like your weight, we'll keep it on fitness and health. If you don't like your weight, but you feel like it's not your fault, you feel like it's external circumstances that are dictating your results, what are you going to do? Like you can't do anything. However, when you own that responsibility, now you have the power to actually steer the ship in the direction that you want it to go. So yes, it's a burden, but at the same time, it's a great degree of freedom because now you have control.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the kind of payback what you said is like, I think ultimately like those are the things we want. We want freedom, we want control. And when we're able to like have those two things, then we feel empowered, right? All right, and so the next slide says a perceptual reality is a choice. It's not a condition, right? If we want something to change in our lives, we have to take accountability for it instead of blaming other people or circumstances. Until we accept that we are responsible for everything we create, we will lack the power to create our ideal life, which is very like basically just exactly what you said. And I think this is actually really important. The very top one actually is a good talking point, is that it really is our perception that is the thing that we can control. And so like when something happens, let's use an example of like we both have autoimmune disorders. Like for me, I have type 1 diabetes and you have Crohn's, right? And so like it wasn't a choice to get either of those two things, right? However, our perception of how we deal with them is our choice. And I'll use mine first, and then I'll definitely want to hear your insight on how you view yours. But like I've literally since day one, I've seen it as a blessing. I've seen it as the greatest thing that's ever happened because it gave me the opportunity. Give me the opportunity to like hang my hat on something and say, you know what, this is happening for a reason, and it made me show up better, right? It actually made me show up better as a in my health and fitness, made me like eat a hell of a lot better, train a lot better, and then those things also showed up in making me a more consistent, better person in my business, in my personal life, and as a father, and just even in my personal fulfillment in life. Actually, all came from this wake up moment when I got diabetes. And so like I've said that so many times. And so if anybody's ever followed me, like it's not the first time I've said it. I say it a lot because I truly believe it. And I took it though. I used the opportunity as something that's like, man, like this is the greatest blessing ever. And Alex Morosi, who is my my mentor, and he's also mentored Tim as well, is I told him like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Like I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this. So like every single time I wake up, and it's not using the motivation, but it's just using it as like that reason, that extra little bit of like why am I doing this, right? Because there's I literally can sell myself 1,000 different ways on why the diabetes is a great thing, but like that's all it comes down to is just my perception of it. Where I've talked to lots of diabetics, and they don't exactly see eye to eye, right? And one of those diabetics being my brother is actually a type 1 diabetic, and like we're totally like we're the same gene pool, and he does not appreciate diabetes at all, and I think it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. So just even within my own bloodline, I think it's cool to be able to see that it literally is just a choice. It is not genetics. It is not like fate. It's just literally has a matter of like you deciding what you're going to do with it. So yeah. So with that being said, Tim, if you want to kind of take your spin on it, even like you can't even go specifically into your Crohn's and kind of your perception of it.
Yeah, so I wish I could say the same thing as you. From day one, I treated this like a blessing. That, in all honesty, was not true for me. The genesis of my condition was very long-winded, and it was kind of a relief to find out that I had Crohn's disease, because the whole way going through the entire medical system, getting all the tests done, staying in the hospital, getting surgeries, they were telling me that I had cancer. And then when I think about it, like it could have been treated the same exact way mentally, but when it came back like, oh no, you don't have cancer, you just have Crohn's. It felt like kind of like that, like the anchor was set so high that when it dropped down to Crohn's, like whatever, it's just Crohn's.
Yeah.
But what I'll say, kind of the analogy. Are you familiar with West Side Barbell, the
Oh, yeah.
powerlifting team?
Oh yeah.
So there's been a lot of studies done on West Side Barbell and kind of why they've been so dang successful as like powerlifting, like competitive powerlifting. And really it comes down to the environment in which they train in, right? They don't have the genetic elite athletes. They don't have the best coaches in the world. They freaking trained out of Louis Simmons' garage for most of the time. Like it was not a great facility, but it was the environment that everybody was pushing each other, competing with one another to be perfect, to be better than the other person. And so kind of the analogy I'm trying to draw here is when I got diagnosed with Crohn's, I already followed, I would say probably 95% of the time, I followed a very strict, clean eating pattern, but there was a lot of holes in my game as far as stress management, sleep, like a lot of personal growth that I had not really focused on. But when you think about Crohn's, it's not as much, it is a lot to do with nutrition, much with diabetes. It's a lot to do with your nutritional lifestyle, but also a lot to do with the other facets of your life too, like managing stress, managing your cortisol, managing your sleep, like all these things I hadn't paid too much of attention to. When I stepped into the arena of Crohn's, now that margin of error got reduced from here to like almost non-existent.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an excuse to deviate away from that. So I had to focus on being perfect, right? Like focus on doing the do every single day, eating the food, getting good sleep, managing my stress. With me specifically, it was within relationships, like managing my stress within relationships, managing my work-life balance, all those things that I've kind of just dusted over for the last, I don't know, 32 years of my life. It focused me. It made me step my game up to another level. And now looking back, I mean, this transition has happened I was diagnosed in September, so it wasn't a really long time ago, but looking back, maybe November, October, I know we had a sit down and we talked about it, and it really changed the way I thought about things. So like quit looking at this as a disease and start looking at this an opportunity. Like now you're playing at the next level. Now you're playing at the next level. You have to bring your game up. And now I don't even have a question of like, do I eat off of plan? That's not a question to me. The question is, I just literally, I eat on plan. That's what I do. Am I going to get 8 hours of sleep? Absolutely. I don't even question that anymore. I don't even give myself like, I have no temptation to stray because I know that the consequences of straying are very dire. So I don't even entertain the idea. So like the last week I was talking with another bodybuilder here in town, and he was like, "Oh man, you must miss your cheat meals." I'm like, "No, not really. Like I used to, for sure. But now I don't even think about that. I think about like, no, like now I approach food in a completely different way. I approach food, does this serve me or is this going to hurt me? And so when I have a craving, which I don't get anymore, which is ironic, I don't get cravings at all. When I get that, I'm like, cool, I'm just going to go eat more rice and more fish or more chicken. Like it's not like, oh, I want pizza or I want ice cream. It's completely reshaped and reframed the way my brain works. And now I can honestly say it is one of the biggest blessings I've gotten in my life.
Yeah. And I think if more and more people actually looked at some of the hard things that happen in their life and the tough things that maybe initially might have seemed like a negative thing or something that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go to, or a problem, like if you're able to reshape that, almost every great like leap in life always comes from some sort of setback or problem or thing that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go to. And if you can just reframe it as like, okay, this is actually a good thing, right? Like what is it teaching me? What's the lesson to be learned here? Then all of a sudden it just becomes like winning every single day, right? So like the good things that happen to you, awesome. Bad things happen to you, awesome, right? Either way, it becomes a win. And ultimately, like that really is your perception to choose whether you think something is as good or bad. Like good or bad is literally just in your head, right? Like Tim, your favorite football team is like the Bills, right?
No, my dad's favorite football
It's your
team.
dad's favorite football team, right?
Yeah, mine is the Chargers.
So you're the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
And like, do you think the Chargers are good?
No, they sucked last year so bad.
But I think they're good.
Yeah, they're a decent team.
Yeah. So there you go. Like ultimately, like, it doesn't matter because like you think they're bad, I think they're good, but all that is our perceptions. Like what are the Chargers actually good? Like what does that even mean, right? And so ultimately, just understanding that like we have the choice to decide whether things are good or bad, whether we're happy or sad. Are you happy or sad right now, Tim?
Oh, I'm incredibly happy, and I can take that another
Be
step.
sad. You know, like be sad. Like do it. Like be sad.
How?
Yeah, just like be sad. Like this. Like be sad. Be sad. And like it's your choice, right? Like that's what I'm trying to get across. That you literally have the choice to be happy, be sad, be good, be bad, be mad, be glad, right? So like ultimately, the more you can take that, it's really empowering, right? Which I talked about on the last slide. And so this is actually something that we've been hitting on, but I think it's worth hitting on some more. Is like victimhood is a choice, right? It's not a condition. By playing the victim card, we give away our power of living as angry, fearful, and hopeless. By ignoring the guilt, we live a life of mediocrity rather than taking responsibility and living a life of greatness, right? And so ultimately, again, it's just like you see this really profound in the very, very first slide. It's just that like once we give our power away, then we can't do anything. Like all those feelings of anger, like fear and hopelessness and resentment, like those are actually all directed at us and our inability to like, oh, I should have done something about this. That's what it's actually what we're actually telling ourselves.
Exactly.
Right. So anything that you want to add to this?
Yeah. So first of all, I love the line victimhood is a choice, not a condition. And I'll give it an example. So I was working with a client in the past. Her name was Nicole, and she had been diagnosed with cancer 2 times before I started working with her. And while we were working together, she got a biopsy and it came back as conspicuous. And so like there was a lot of mindset stuff that we were working on at the time, and a lot of like just our general state on top of the X's and O's of fitness and nutrition and stuff like that. And I remember saying something about her being a survivor, and she stopped me. She was like, "Tim, stop." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "I hate that word." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I'm not a survivor." I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" She's like, "When you think of the word survivor, you label yourself with an identity of like, I live with this identity for the rest of my life." She's like, "I don't want that. I'm a person, just like you're a person. I don't want anybody to look at me and think, oh, they're a cancer survivor." And I thought that was like super, super powerful because she had a really good disposition about like going in and getting this biopsy and having it being conspicuous and having to get follow-up tests done. And like most people would be freaked out. They would be like really torn up about it. Like they would be scared, especially if they had cancer in the past, because it's very likely to come back. But she wasn't like that. She had a very strong disposition towards the whole thing. And it was all because she chose not to be a victim and chose instead to focus on what she could control, which was her attitude, her mood, and her state. And that was absolutely something she could control. And it changed the way that that she approached the diagnosis. And I can tell you now, she's free and clear now. But I'm of the belief that you you can manifest things. So like if you do have a sickness and you like if you look at people like that get diagnosed with terminal illnesses, for instance, and the ones that have this I'm gonna die type of mentality, they never make it. But the person that's like, I'm a fighter, I'm gonna freaking beat this thing, they might not always make it, but they at least have a chance now. So I do believe that our thoughts and our state are far more impactful than just the words that we say.
I believe that to the core. I'm 100% about, especially when it comes to health and with sickness. Even before I got into per se the health game, I always believed that my mind it dictated whether I actually got sick or not. 90, I would say 95% of the time. There's like the 5% of the times where like you get really, really sick, like no matter how much mind stuff you say, like you're just freaking sick. But there's a big reason why I haven't been sick in over 2.5 years. And it's because like anytime like I start to get into a place where I feel like I'm going to get sick, I have my things I go to that I know in my head that I believe in. That if I just do these things, I will not get sick, right? And a lot of those goes back to sleep, goes back to like washing hands, taking care of myself, and ultimately just like believing myself that like I'm not going to get sick. And it's the manifestation of it. It's like anytime that I see like my family, they're like, oh, I'm starting to feel good. I'm like, no. Like I'm not feeling good. You're telling yourself it's okay. It's like, tell yourself you're feeling good. I'm feeling good. And I literally stopped them in their tracks. Like, no, tell yourself you're feeling good. And ultimately, like, it's just, it's what we talk about. It's like the happy or sad thing. Like, no, tell yourself you're happy. No, I'm sad right now. No, you're not. You're happy. Say, I'm happy right now. Right. And it's like literally by doing that thing, it's like, it's really weird. It's not though. It actually works. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Were you at that mastermind with Dr. Kashi when he gave the talk about the placebo effect? It was down in Austin.
Yeah, that was the last time I was sick, like legitimately. Like that was
okay.
That was like I was sick right after that, and then I've got sick since that moment. Yes.
But his basic tenet was like they did all these studies with performance with athletes, and they would tell them that this product was in the formulation or whatever. Yep. And whatever they believed is how they responded. Like, so the person that believed that they had like this supplement in them, they would outperform the other group that didn't think that they had the supplement. And the truth is neither one of them had the supplement. It was just the power of what it's not persuasion, but it's the power of I'm trying to think of the word there. What's that?
Placebo effect.
Yeah, it's the placebo effect. Yeah. So I think it's crazy how strong your mind is.
Yeah, 100%. It's just funny you said that because that was legitimately the last time I was sick. I was like sick, like 5 days. Like we were stuck in Austin. It was tough. All right, and then this is one of my favorite lines. I like to use this a lot when coaching people, and it's just powerful, right? And the space between stimulus and response, like that is your power to choose, right? And so the stimulus response is basically like you have a stimulus, right? So you feel it, you start to feel whatever it is, you start to feel like you want to, anger, sadness, happiness, whatever it may be, right? It's any emotion, and then you respond to it, right? But ultimately, like there's a space when you feel this emotion and then when you can respond. And when you actually are able to lengthen this space out, you're able to make more of a logical decision, right? And so when you're able to make a logical decision, you can actually decide like, okay, like let's say for an example, like Tim came at me, right? He came at me with some sort of remark. And all of a sudden I got really like defensive, I got really mad, and like, what? Right? But instead of me responding like, Tim, like this, like I took a moment, right? I'm like, why would you do that, right? And then all of a sudden I stopped before I responded. I looked at it and I'm like, oh, maybe this is why that happened. Hey, Tim, like, did you actually mean this? It's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, boom, right? And now instead of me combating him, now we're on the same team. So I actually thought about it for a second. I responded in a way that put us both on the same page. And so like that can happen in many different type of situations, but that space between stimulus and response, like that is your power to choose, right? Any situation, right? And so like I'm a huge believer in like trying to delay that as much as you possibly can. And I talk a lot about when I make big decisions, I do try to like give myself that space between when I feel really good about something, oh, this is gonna feel really good, this is a smart move, right? And then I'll make sure that I give myself enough space to let the emotion run off and I can start thinking about logically. And like 9 times out of 10, it's actually not a good idea. But that one time, that's the time. That's all that matters. I actually wanted those to hit. So, Tim, yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
So it's actually kind of ironic that this is in the slides today. So I think it was literally just yesterday. Alex's wife Layla had posted something on her story, and I love the way that she actually defined them differently. So what you're talking about is a response.
Mhm.
When you knee-jerk react out of emotion, that's called a reaction.
Yep.
So what she posted was something to the effect of, they actually do not, that's a disqualifier. They do not hire people that react. They only hire people that respond, which means
Oh,
they give
that's good.
themselves that space to think about it and to come from a logical standpoint. And I think something that you can interject in there too, on top of logic, is empathy as well. So
Mhm.
when this shows up in my life the most, and I'll say this with 100% candid honesty, is it showed up in negative ways in my life in the past, is in your closest relationship. So like your spouse, your girlfriend. Like for me, it was my ex-wife. Like I was really not good at this. Like I am great at coming at you. I'm really great at reacting, but I wasn't so good at responding. And it got me in a lot of trouble. But if I could pause, and it's something that I've definitely been practicing lately, and I've seen such drastic changes in the result. And I'll say this even from a selfish standpoint. If I really want my point to be heard and to be taken seriously, I need to slow down. I need to give that space and respond logically and empathetically. So meaning I've looked at it through their point of view before responding. So how many times have you reacted and that wasn't what they meant? Like you were reacting because you heard something, it triggered you, the tonality, whatever, and you responded as if they meant that, and it caused a big drawn out fight, when at the end of it they're like, that's not even what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant this. And you're like, oh, if I would have just taken 5 seconds to just take a breath, think about, hey, is this person a good person that actually has my best interest at heart?
Yeah.
Of course they didn't mean it the way that I was taking it.
Mhm.
Respond, or you wouldn't react emotionally at them. You would respond with empathy and love. And I think that's the other power here, is that we get to interject some empathy into our responses.
I wrote that down. Reacting versus responding, like that is so powerful. And like the way you even said right there is like the responding. Like when you respond with empathy and love, and when you react with combativeness. You react with with anger and like confrontation, even, right? And so I think that's really powerful. Like that's huge. Like I'm going to be a responder, not a reactor, and that's a really simple way to put that. And how you like. Reactors are knee jerk and responders take time. Like that's how I just visualized right there. So that was cool. That was really cool. Okay. Belief breakthrough and law of choice and accountability, which is like literally it's fundamental. That's what like the belief breakthrough process is fundamental to the law of choice and accountability. Because until we've accepted that we have created our own beliefs based on our interpretations of the past, we will never have the willingness to change them. Right? What people have done to us is their responsibility. The beliefs we have created about what they did to us is our responsibility. That's powerful. And belief breakthrough is the assumption that we are the creators of our own beliefs. Otherwise, we would have no power to change them. And so, yeah, I mean, it's literally the fundamental principle of belief breakthrough is that like all the limits we put on ourselves is just that like we put it on ourselves. Like God didn't put it on us, our parents didn't put it on us. It's not genetic. It literally is our interpretation of it somewhere along the line. And not to say that it wasn't conscious. Like most of these things we make are not conscious decisions, but that's why the belief breakthrough process is so powerful, because as we start to dive in, we start to take part of these experiences and be like, oh, like, I had actually decided that about myself, that I wasn't worthy. Like, that's not true, right? And then I have the power to change it. And I have the power to reinterpret that story and say, like, you know what? I am worthy. I deserve it. I can do this, right? And when you're able to do that, you consciously create your life. And that's freaking cool, right? You have the ability to do whatever you want. Like, and it all starts up here. All starts with like, it's not about it's literally just removing limits. Like we are enough already. Like so many people think that they have to grow skills and they have to get better and they have to like, you know, go through all this stuff. But like what I realize is that we are enough right now. What the real goal is, like, how do we just keep on removing the limitations, these little these little stops that we put on ourselves, so we can just continue to like let our greatness out, right? And that's why it's important to always see greatness in yourself, because like you are enough right now. And so this has actually been a big belief and a big epiphany, big breakthrough that I've had just as of recently, just understanding like I am enough right now, without right now being a huge amplifier in what makes you really feel it. So, Tim, any thoughts on this one?
A whole host of thoughts on this one. So I'll start with kind of an anecdote, personal anecdote. So, and I know I was at your event and we did the board breaking, which was really freaking cool. It was a very visceral experience of what was actually going on internally within us. But my number one limiting belief up until this last year, it had gripped me really hard, unconsciously, I would say, because I didn't know it was gripping me. But I've always had this need, you know, call it a gaping hole inside of me that I needed to fill. And I thought that I would fill it with accomplishment, with doing this, that, and the other, you know, having so much money, owning this business, being this kind of some person of stature or influence or power. And really all that ended up being was a hamster wheel to nowhere, right? Like you accomplish a goal and guess what? That hole, it's still there. Right. And to bring that back, the limiting belief was that I wasn't enough. And it stemmed from childhood. And I think I've told the story before on this podcast, but it was a memory that literally I worked through with my therapist several months ago, but very impactful. I was like 7, 8 years old and I had a baseball game and I batted for the cycle. I literally had a great baseball game, home run, triple, double, single. Like I was on fire from the plate, but I made an error. I played third base. I made an error from the field. Like the ball went right between my legs. And on the way home, I remember being like so excited with my buddies and like all I really wanted was my dad's approval of like, you're good enough, son. And I remember saying like, you know, I did great today, didn't I? And he's like, yeah, but what happened with that one play where the ball went between your legs? And I remember just feeling like the winds just got like knocked out of my sails. And since that moment on, I had this feeling that I wasn't enough. And unless I could gain that approval from someone that was not me, I was never going to be enough. And the truth is, you're never going to gain that approval unless you start with approving of yourself. So it's really powerful that I broke that belief. And I'll tell you like kind of the feeling or the after effect of breaking that belief is picture you're walking through life and you've got about 100 pounds of metal chains on your body and you're doing everything, but it's always freaking hard. Like taking a step is 100 pounds harder than taking a step normally. Going upstairs is way harder, lifting, going to work, like everything is just exhausting and tiring. And then when you break that belief, it's like someone comes over and like, hey, here's the key, by the way. You can just, you know, spin this thing and it just falls off. You feel lighter. You feel like, oh, wow, like I can stand up a little bit taller. I can be confident in myself. I can go after things that I didn't think I could go after before because I didn't believe I was good enough to go after those things. And honestly, it's like someone just took off 100 pounds of weight off of your back and you can just run through life. So like that's the metaphor of how it made me feel. So I think when we talk to clients, one of the first things we have to do is get them to first take responsibility for where they're at, right? It's not their parents' fault. It's not their children's fault. It's not their job's fault. It's not their spouse's fault. Ultimately, it's your responsibility. You're the reason that you're here. Yeah, life might have thrown you a bad deck of cards, but I have Crohn's. Logan has diabetes. We didn't get the best cards either. We still took responsibility for that. And the only way that you're ever going to change is by admitting to yourself that I'm in control.
Mhm.
And once you do that, the X's and O's, they don't mean as much. You start with that decision, you start with that responsibility. Now you have control. Now you have freedom. Now you can.
Yeah.
As before, you couldn't because it was never it was never your fault, and therefore it was never your responsibility. Therefore, you never had any choice.
Yeah. Dude, it's so powerful. It really is. Like it seems, and it's so funny because like it's not funny, but it's most people will never believe that something in experience when you're 7 or 8 years old could still affect you when you're 32 years old, but it really does. Like those are all the types of decisions we make about ourselves as young kids that we take with us. These limits, these stops we put on ourselves that we never address because it's not something that we like. It's not conscious. Like you didn't consciously say I'm not deserving. It's just like that was what is implied by that comment from your dad. Whether he meant it or not is irrelevant because again, like that's external. You
It
took
was
it that way.
my story. Yeah, it was my
Your
story that
story,
built around
your
that.
story.
Yeah.
And so while it didn't serve you for, for 20 plus years, it can now. Right. And I think that's what's really powerful is that like some people talk about all the stuff they've gone through as like it's a problem or that it's like it's an issue or that like you can't overcome it. But I'm like, that's the reason, like that's literally the exact reason why it's so powerful for you to make the decision now to change it. Right. It's like I've been doing this for 20 years. Like, all right, I'm ready to think about this differently. Because it hasn't served me up to this point. Like, does it serve you to think that you're not deserving, that you're not worthy? Like, of course not, right? So like, let's recreate this. Let's create it so it does serve you. So it becomes something that empowers you. You share a story like this, makes you feel good because you know what? Now once I did that, now look how my life has changed since I started this new belief that I am deserving, that I am worthy. And then you know what that does? It inspires you, but also somebody else hears that same story, like, oh, like my dad said that to me, or something like that, very similar to me. And all of a sudden connects with them. Then all of a sudden, boom, now it opens up somebody else's life and helps them like start to question like, why do I think that about myself as well? And then that's really what this is all about, is truly just about growth. That's and like uh, somewhere in there we talked about growth and fulfillment. Like that's what life is really about. It's truly just about growing. And fulfillment is not from achievements. Just like you said, it's not from achievements. It's not from getting new goals. It's not from like status. It's not from money. It's really from personal growth. And I think that I know that if we just focus more on that aspect of life, like like your decisions of what you wanted and what you did would be a lot easier because you understood like what the real goal is. The real goal is not actually to achieve all these, a certain amount of weight or a certain amount of money or a certain amount of status, but it really is just like it's to grow and to like to learn the right lessons and to overcome things and to create your personal power and like build it up and believe and just believe in yourself in all situations, have the confidence, have the freedom, have the control to know that you're always making the decision that serves you. So
Yeah. And I think one of my harboring thoughts that like prevented me from breaking it initially, because it took several months to break that belief, um, was okay, but that's also where I get my edge. Like, is that not being good enough? That's what wakes me up in the morning and pushes me. And my therapist, she challenged me. She was like, okay, what other motivators do you have? Like, what could be another motivating factor for you? And it took me a while to come up with it. It really did. But in all honesty, I came to the place where gratitude was the most powerful motivator in my life. Now I wake up ready to go, chase my dreams, chase my goals, give everything I got every single day because I'm grateful for where I'm at. I'm grateful for what God's given me. I'm grateful for the people and the relationships I have in my life, the business the job that I have, the clients that I serve. Like I'm so grateful. And now when I chase those dreams, I'm not chasing it out of desperation. I'm chasing it out of this empowered place. And if I fail, whoop de frickin' do. Like I can be more ballsy. I can be more confident because it doesn't matter if I fail. I can just go forward because I'm grateful for where I'm at right now. I'm valuable as is, not if I do what X, Y, and Z.
I have enough right now. Like that's what I think of right there too. It's like I'm valuable right now. I'm worthy right now. Right. Like it's so powerful just to be like you are enough right now. And that's very freeing. And so hopefully that will resonate with somebody that like it's not about again, it's not about the goals you achieve. It's not about like that. It's not about this. It's just like it's actually being free right now. It's about the choice right now. I choose right now. Like that's what's freeing. I'm enough right now. So super like that hit me. That hit me really good. All right, and then let's finish it out here with action, right? We always got to finish out on action because ultimately, talk is talk, right? Talk is like the second level from thoughts to talk. Now it's action, right? And so for everybody who's watching this, like it's actually time to take some action and like what are the top three things in your life that you've not taken responsibility for? And so ultimately, I think that, the more that we actually start to question these things, and the more we start to realize that, like, oh, I've always had this, sort of this negative belief, and does that really serve me? No. So then I'm gonna take responsibility for it, and then once you take responsibility for it, then all of a sudden you have the ability to actually start to take to put together a plan to overcome it, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty simple. I think the belief breakthrough process, if you're doing, if you're not doing belief breakthrough process, you should be, because ultimately by doing belief breakthrough process, you start completely living the beliefs, and you basically, like, what you're not taking responsibility for essentially comes to the surface in a way of, like, usually it's epiphanies. And so what I one thing about this question actually is that it's more of the unconscious things you're not taking responsibility for rather than the conscious things. That's maybe the best way to describe it, is like, uh, there's things you're taking responsibility for that you probably think you are taking responsibility for, but until you start to uncover some of these root beliefs and some of these things that it's costing you, you actually don't realize that you're not taking responsibility for a lot in your life. Because if you talk to anybody, like Tim, like, tell me things you're not taking responsibility for. Like, dude, I'm a responsible person. I take 100% full responsibility. That's our core values. But as you start to uncover these root beliefs, you start to dig a little deeper on the surface. Like, oh, there's some things, and that's why the belief breakthrough process is so powerful. And so the action, again, is like certainly not the top 3 things you're taking responsibility for. If you can do it consciously, and if nothing comes to you, that's where the belief breakthrough work comes into play. Because probably a lot of these things we're taking responsibility for are probably in our subconscious. Because ultimately, like the cognitive dissonance tells us that we don't want to be incongruent with ourselves. And so if we don't think we're taking responsibility, or somehow we'll talk ourselves out of it anyway. So anyway, Tim, what's your advice to everybody on taking action on this law of choice and accountability?
So I think it starts with a choice. So the first responsibility you need to take is extreme responsibility for everything in your life, and that being kind of an umbrella term for whatever pops up. Now that's part of your responsibility, because I'll completely agree with you. Like, most of us live our lives completely unconscious. Like, we don't know what we're taking responsibility for. Like, some stuff is obvious. Like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a little bit overweight. I eat poorly. I need to take responsibility for that. Like,
Yeah.
that's an easy one, right? That's an external thing that you can see every single day. And a lot of times you go out and have that hamburger, that milkshake, like, where you're messing up. Like, it's not hard to find.
Yeah.
But like these deeper ones, like, in the way that I think about it, is like we have these major limiting beliefs that we need to start with, like these core, I call them like pillar limiting beliefs, that make up a lot. But underneath though, like, if you picture them as like 3 rocks, when you lift one up, you're going to find like 10 minor limiting beliefs underneath that one big belief. And then when you lift up those minor limiting beliefs, you might even find some more underneath there. So you just need to have a commitment that when you take responsibility for everything, that includes everything that you uncover. Because, kind of like, jokingly, every time I do a breakthrough session, it's kind of like an episode of Lost. And I don't know if you guys remember that TV show. At the end of the show, it's like, dang it, now I have 10 more questions and no dang answers. Like, and that's what it feels like. Every time I break through a belief, or I get through a belief, I'm like, crap, now I have like all these other beliefs that I didn't even know I had. And now I have to dive into those. But I've already made that commitment to myself. I've already taken responsibility for those, meaning the more I uncover, the more I have to uncover. And I've went from being frustrated to, like, now I get really curious, like, what is underneath that stone? What's underneath the stone below that? Like, I wonder how all of these are tied together. Where am I seeing evidence of this in my life? Like, where's this holding me back? Where is this impacting my communication? And as a personal one, like, one that I'll just be honest, is like one that I'm working through right now is saying the unadulterated, honest, and raw truth. Like, when I'm talking to somebody, like, I can be completely frank, and that fear of rejection or fear of hurting someone's feelings, it's mostly rejection or disappointing somebody, has really stopped me from being completely honest with the way that I feel or what I'm seeing, or what, like when you're interacting with your spouse, your girlfriend, like, or even clients, like, the best thing we can do is be completely honest, and their response to that really isn't our responsibility. But we're actually we're robbing them, and we're robbing ourselves if we sugarcoat that truth. So that is something I'm honestly working through right now, because I see it popping up in my life a lot. And the act of putting pause between stimulus and response has really helped me think through How do I respond honestly, openly, vulnerably, but in a way that they can actually hear my communication? And I will not pretend like I'm perfect at it yet, but it's something, it's a stone that I've just uncovered that I know, okay, that's what I need to own. That's my responsibility, is that.
Yeah. And I'll just finish it out kind of on that point too. Just when you said like, because you're not perfect, like none of us are, right? And ultimately, like me and Tim and you know all the other coaches, like we all lead from the front, and this is a lifelong process of continuous growth. There is no finish line. This is not a start and stop kind of deal. There's no finish line, and ultimately, when the goal is just growth, the goal is the wisdom, the goal is the right lessons, the goal is the fulfillment. You realize that like it's just like it's truly to enjoy the journey, right? The destination is just one checkpoint. That's all it is. Like it's not the goal. And when you come out from that point of view, like this, it's always gonna be happening. And so like, it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna grow for 6 weeks and stop growing, or I'm gonna like lose weight for 6 weeks and stop losing weight. But just a matter of like, this is what it is. Like this is what it is. Like life is fun, and again, embrace the challenges. Look at everything like an experiment. Learn the right lessons. Get curious, not frustrated, right? And when you're able to do that, man, freedom, control, choice, happiness, right? That's what it all comes down to. So that's it, my friends. Law of accountability and choice. This is one of my favorite ones. Tim, thank you so much for being an amazing host on this one. And for all you guys out there listening, like 100% ownership. Take responsibility for your life, and like it's just so much more fun. And you get to keep control. You get to keep the power, and you get to do whatever it is you want in your life. Like again, like you are your only limiter. So happy Thursday to you, for Tim and myself, and the Limitless episode number 11, Law, Choice, and Accountability. We are out. Ah.